Alright guys, we're back on the F350. I let this primer sit about 6 hours. I think I had it done about 1 o'clock this afternoon. I hit it with some guide coat and I started hitting it with some 320, knocking the orange peel out of it and trying to find some highs and lows, and I only found one little itsy bitsy dent that I didn't get in this side, and it's right at the bottom of that fender. But she's not going to the SEMA show, so I don't think we're going to be too concerned about that. And it may just be a tiny low spot because that's where the bedside brace bolts, right below that, and it may just be tweaked in a little bit right there from where it had some snow or slush or something built up on it and that bedside was rattling. I mean, I have them unbolted right now because I had to weld the crack up, but they're pretty flimsy. So I'm hitting it with some 320, and then I have one of these 320-400 foam backed pads, and they work nice for getting into areas like up into here. I still got some orange peel to sand out of here, but I got the mask on here when I'm sanding. This stuff is gross when you're sanding this much of it. If you're just sanding a little bit, I'll usually wet sand it, but not today. There's just too much to cover, and I don't feel like trying to pick all that wet sanding sludge out of the top of these bed rail areas where the clips go in them for those plastic bed rail covers. So we're working on that, trying to get it blocked out. I got some work I got to do tomorrow for my business. I have to install a whole house water booster pump. We had installed a sprinkler for a customer of mine, in-ground sprinkler system, and the water pressure was very poor in their area, so we installed the whole house booster pump to give the sprinkler system a little extra charge. Plus it works for the whole house too, and it was about 7 years ago, and this pump has started to leak a little bit around its seals, and they let it go a little longer than they should, so now it's taking the bearings out in the electric motor. I'm sure it won't be, if they let it go much longer, the motor's going to lock up on it, which doesn't mean that they won't have water pressure, but it'll probably short it out and trip the GFI breaker that I have it on. So we're going to go change that out tomorrow and do a little other plumbing job for them while we're in there. They got a whole house water filtration system, so we have to put a backflow or a check valve in that. So we have one on the house side of the water and one on the sprinkler system, so nobody else's water can get where it's not supposed to be. Plus that's local health department code here for us. Anyways, so we're going to get that done tomorrow. No snow in the forecast. Don't know where it's at, but northern Ohio here usually we're at about somewhere around 20 inches by mid-January, and we're just past the first full week of January, so either we're going to get clobbered next week or it's going to be a light winter, which isn't good. We need that snow to subsidize our income. Usually doing this kind of stuff is what subsidizes my income in the wintertime. But yeah, that's what we got going on here. So we're going to go out and do that in the morning. I figured I'd come back tonight. I got done with dinner and decided to go for a ride and come back out to the shop. My shop's about 15 minutes away from my house, so I figured I'd come back out here and give this a go around for a little while. But for the most part, all this bodywork came out pretty good. I'm sure even if it's not perfect, which I'm sure it's not, it's white, so it's not going to make a whole hell of a lot of difference. It's 1,000 times better than when it came into my shop, and we're not even halfway done yet. We still got to get those door bottoms finished cleaning up. and get some etch primer and some high build primer inside those doors, or some epoxy, one of the two. Passenger's door was real crusty along the bottom. Driver's door not so much, but it's all mostly inside, but there's just a little coming around the outside, so I'll probably come up 3 or 4 inches around the outside of the door and solvent blend it off there, which I'm not really too excited about doing that. I'm not exactly the king of solvent blends. Talking about paint disasters the other day, that was another one of my paint disasters. Didn't take my clear far enough away from my base color first time I tried to solvent blend, and I didn't know that I had it all sanded a decent ways away, but what I didn't realize was how powerful the actual edge blender solvent is, and I got too close to my color, and that clear started running. It was a silver metallic, and it just turned into a puddle of mud. Luckily, it was on just a garbage vehicle a buddy of mine planned on selling anyway, and it was rusty as all get out. So he didn't really care much about the paint, but I felt terrible about it. Live and learn type experience when it comes to this stuff. I think that's the only one I really made a mess of. That stuff's tricky. Anybody who's not in the field and has tried to use it before, you either understand it and you get it, or you don't. Just takes a little practice. I think solvent melts are better kept for short little 1, 2, or 3 inch wide areas, like sail panels, like above a rear door on a car, or on a door post. You know, something that's only a couple inches wide. I tried to carry it down 3 feet of a back quarter of a Cadillac. I carried it all right, brought the clear and the base with it. So, I don't know. I'm up in the air about it. I'd rather clear a whole panel, but when it works awesome. I learned a neat little tip, and I'm trying to remember if I learned it watching Jeff over at Photo Finish, or if it was from Darren, or who it was. But when you're going to do your solvent blend, instead of soft edging your masking tape, if you're going to blend, say, a sail panel, you build like a little a paper tent over it, and you get your 2 coats of clear on your panel, and on that second coat, just sort of fog it towards that, and then pull that off, and dust some edge blender solvent on there. You can even add that edge blender solvent to the gun when you've got just a little bit of clear, you know, reduce it up to 100%, and then spray that on, and then come back the next day. And usually, the ones I've been lucky with, all you have to do is buff them, but I've taken a little bit of 2000 and given them a little nib, and then buff it off with some like polishing compound, nothing real heavy cut, because they don't, the ones that I've done, I've also burned some of them off trying to buff it, and it starts to pick up the clear, because the new clear didn't burn into the old clear, even though I had it scuffed down real well. Something in my technique, or evidently I've gotten a little better at it. I try not to do it very often because I suck at it. So anyways, guys, I'm going to get back on this in the morning. I just figured I'd give you a quick little rundown of how this is panning out. It looks like it's going to be okay, as long as after I seal this, it doesn't get in a boxing match with my base coat, or my base coat doesn't get in a wrestling match with my clear coat and decide to all wrinkle up and make a mess. But try to learn my lesson about making sure when there's single stage paint under something to either put single stage back over it, or don't burn through it when you're sanding, because it'll pick those edges up and looks like, you know, wrinkled wet wallpaper underneath. Sometimes they calm down, sometimes they don't. Usually for me, I end up taking a red Scotch Brite and some water, letting it sit a little bit and kind of wet sanding the wrinkle off of it. But you can usually dust those out, as well as fish eyes for that matter. You don't want them in the first place, but we run these torpedo heaters in here, and you know, a lot of guys would say, well, don't you have a problem with fish eyes? Well, I've actually never ever had a problem with fish eyes inside. I had them on a vehicle that I painted outside, but I've never had them inside here. I guess the key is to keep your heat source well away from where you're working, so anything that's in the air falls out. Have a decent filter system on your air compressor. I mean, I don't have an oilless air compressor, but I'll show you what I got for a filter system here. Got the glass bead cabinet and the filter underneath that tarp, since we paint in the same place we do Bodywork. But anyways, I got my air line coming down. It's about 30 feet from my compressor. I know some of you guys are seeing this cast iron black pipe and going, oh, what are you doing there? But I've never had any problems with it. We've got a ball valve in the bottom of it. You can let moisture out there. A little backwards on my setup here. I should have my water trap before my regulator, but it's always been this way and it's never given me a problem. So we have just a regular water trap there, and then we go back uphill into what I call a toilet paper filter, and it's a motor guard M30 filter. The element looks like a roll of toilet paper, and that thing has never let me down. I've actually before I bought that one, I borrowed one from somebody, and it actually had toilet paper in it. Didn't have it mounted on the wall, just had an in and out airline fitting on it, and it worked fine. Not a drop of water, not a drop of oil. You know, as air compressors get older, that oil tends to really bypass those compressors, and it goes out your discharge side, and you end up with it in your hose, especially with that warm air. But we have a little bit larger diameter hose. This is instead of a quarter, it's 5/16 or 3/8. And then we have, I don't know if you guys can see the end of that, but those are our high flow couplers. Before I had those on there, I was trying to paint with an HVLP gun, and it just didn't seem to get enough air. And I have a two-stage 80-gallon compressor, and there are times where it fights to keep up. I've actually painted with two guns on it on a bigger truck before, and boy, you darn near run completely out of air. So, at any rate, that's a quickie about what's going on here. I'll catch you guys in the morning. Have a good night. Alright guys, it's Monday, back on the pickup here, and I didn't think I'd get any time to sand it today, but I finished up my sanding and had a few scratches I filled in, but other than that, it's going to be sand a little glaze off a couple scratches that I threw some in, and sweep the floor, wet it down, and it'll be go time. So here we go. Got one little spot there. Everything's sanded down with 400. Got one little spot there, and then I hit some pinholes on the other side I was talking about last night, and that's that. All the edges are sanded, and now we just got to clean up the Mojave Desert in here and get as much dirt up as I can, get the floor swept, and to get it sprayed down with some water to help hold the dust down. And another thing I do, and I don't know if it's a good thing, bad thing, or if it does anything, I usually throw a piece of log chain over the axle to the floor, so that it's got a metal ground so the dust isn't jumping up and getting in there. But I'm sure we'll get some dirt in it. Usually do. It's dirty in here. That's why we cut and polish them. So that's where we're at for now, and I'm going to tag this on to the last video since this is going to be a short one, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.